Hello and welcome to This Date in History, aka TDH. This show is all about the events that occurred today in years past, both recognized by actual historians, but mainly things I personally find intriguing enough for me to bring to you. The source of this information comes from the smart device application Today in History on this day. For links to the app, music, and anything else potentially interesting, check the box below. Anyway, on with the show! Today is Moon's Day, aka Monday, November 22nd, 2021. In 1307, the Papal Bull Pastoralia Praemunenti, issued by Pope Clement V, instructed all Christian monarchs in Europe to seize the assets and arrest all Templars. Moving on up a few hundred years, in 1718, British pirate Edward Tache, aka Blackbeard, was attacked and boarded by forces commanded by Royal Navy Lieutenant Robert Maynard. The following battle saw Blackbeard dead, but with him fell Maynard's first officer, Mr. Hyde. In 1837, William Lyon Mackenzie, a Canadian journalist and politician, called for a rebellion when he published To the People of Upper Canada in his newspaper The Constitution. Moving on up to the next century, in 1908, the Albanian alphabet was established during the Congress of Manastir. This date is known as Alphabet Day in Albania, Kosovo, and North Macedonia, as well as several other outlying areas. Couple decades later, in 1935, the first commercial trans-Pacific air service took off when the China Clipper began its 8,000-mile flight from Alameda, California to Manila. In 1942, General Friedrich Paulus sent a telegram to Adolf Hitler during the Battle of Stalingrad stating the German Sixth Army was surrounded. The next year, in 1943, known today as the Lebanese Republic, today is their Independence Day, having once been under the control of France. Also in 1943, meeting in Cairo, Egypt, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and Chinese Premier Chiang Kai-shek discussed ways to defeat Japan during the Cairo Conference. 20 years after that, in 1963, after having refused to authorize a false flag attack on U.S. soil to gain public support to declare war on Cuba, among other things that went against the status quo, U.S. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Following this, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in as the 36th president. 8 years later, in 1791, the Cairngorm Plateau disaster, to date the worst mountaineering tragedy for Britain, saw the deaths of 5 children and one of their leaders due to exposure while in the Scottish mountains. Francisco Franco had ruled Spain with an iron fist since before the Second World War, but that eventually came to an end when, in 1975, Juan Carlos was declared the new king. 2 years after that, in 1977, regular Concorde services from London to New York was inaugurated by British Airways. Although Concorde as a service whatsoever ceased in 2003, it still paved the way for the future. 11 years later, in 1988,
on behalf of the entire B-2 team, I am proud to present the first B-2 bomber.
The first prototype B-2 Spirit stealth bomber was revealed in Palmdale, California. With the research and development cost of the program to eventually reach $23 billion, it wouldn't be until April of 1997 before it was introduced as a completed product. In 1989, Lebanese President René Mouad was assassinated via bomb when it went off near his motorcade in West Beirut. The year after that, in 1990, withdrawing from the Conservative Party leadership election, British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher confirmed the end of her reign. 5 years later, in 1995, Toy Story, becoming the first feature-length film created completely using computer-generated imagery, was released. Now we're in the 2000s. In 2002, during the Miss World contest in Nigeria, over 100 people died as collateral damage when an attack aimed at the contestants occurred. The next year, in 2003, a DHL Express cargo plane was hit on its left wing shortly after takeoff by a surface-to-air missile, forcing the craft to land. Also in 2003, England became the first side from the Northern Hemisphere to win the Rugby World Cup final when they defeated Australia. And in 2005, Angela Merkel became the first female Chancellor of Germany. Births: Abigail Adams, 1744, Charles de Gaulle, 1890, Helenka Pantaloni, 1900, Rodney Dangerfield, 1921, Eugene Stoner, 1922, Mark Ruffalo, 1967, Sean Panning, 1980. Deaths: George Washington Gale Ferris Jr., 1896. And that concludes the show. Once again, check the underbar for any links you may be interested in. For your dose of past events daily, I am Aoxander, and you are you. Toodles!